They told him he didn't belong in seat 2A. No eye contact, no greeting, not even a glass of water. Just a cold reminder. Even in first class, a black man can be made to feel invisible. But they chose the wrong passenger. Because Malcolm Avery isn't just another traveler. He's the CEO of the entire airline. And in less than 15 minutes, the crew who ignored him would find their careers grounded for good. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about silent strength, earned power, and what happens when dignity is denied at 35,000 feet. Malcolm Avery stepped onto Orion Air Flight 718 dressed like any other businessman. Dark jeans, a gray button-down shirt, and a leather laptop bag slung over one shoulder. At 45, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had long since stopped needing to prove anything. The CEO of Orion Air, traveling incognito, had one simple mission: experience his own airline the way any regular passenger would. The moment he reached the jet bridge, the atmosphere shifted. Lauren James, the lead flight attendant, stood at the door with a rehearsed smile plastered on her face. It had been warmly extended to the older white man ahead of Malcolm, complete with a "Welcome aboard, Mr. Whitmore, seat 2A, just this way." But when Malcolm stepped forward, her smile faltered. Her eyes flicked from his face to the boarding pass he offered. A beat, then another. "This seat isn't meant for your type," she muttered under her breath, barely audible but unmistakably cold. He blinked. "Pardon?" Lauren's smile returned, tight and artificial. "Seat 2A is up front, to the left," she said curtly, avoiding his gaze entirely. No welcome, no assistance. She turned to the next passenger without another word. Across the aisle, a young man holding a phone tilted slightly toward the doorway paused. He had been recording a birthday message for his mother, catching snippets of the boarding experience to send later. Now he blinked, frowning, thumb still hovering over the record button. Malcolm moved down the aisle without saying a word. Inside, he was a storm of controlled emotions. This wasn't the first time he'd been slighted in a premium space. But this was different. This was his airline, a company he'd built from the ground up with a mission of dignity, fairness, and respect. And now, here he was, being reminded that even CEO status couldn't shield him from bias when it was wearing a polished name badge and a forced smile. He took his seat in 2A, folded his coat across his lap, and quietly powered on his phone. Today, he wasn't just flying, he was documenting. Malcolm sat quietly in 2A, back straight, hands resting on his lap. The hum of the cabin settled into the low drone of air vents and polite conversation. He didn't fidget, he didn't sigh, he observed. Across the aisle, a flight attendant named Chelsea Adams leaned in, smiling brightly as she offered a warm towel and pre-flight beverage to a white gentleman in 2C. "Still or sparkling water, sir? We also have chilled orange juice if you prefer." He chuckled, choosing sparkling. Moments later, she returned with a glass topped with a lemon wedge and a linen napkin. Malcolm glanced down at his own tray table. Still empty. No smile. No offer. Row by row, Chelsea and her colleague Brian moved through the first-class cabin, exuding warmth to some, indifference to others. The pattern became disturbingly clear. Passengers with light skin tones received personalized greetings, polite banter, and full service. Those with darker complexions, like the elderly Asian woman in 3B, were met with silence and half glances. She had pressed her call button once. It went unanswered. Malcolm pressed his own. Nothing. 5 minutes passed. He pressed it again. Still nothing. On the third press, Brian walked past his row entirely without looking his way. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. The silence screamed louder than words ever could. Beside him, a white man in his 50s gave Malcolm a quick side glance. "They haven't offered you anything?" he asked in a lowered voice, brows furrowed. Malcolm shook his head slightly, his voice measured. "Not yet." The man frowned. "They offered me scotch and hot towels twice already." Before Malcolm could respond, Lauren James approached from the galley. "Sir," she said without warmth, "may I see your boarding pass again?" He blinked. "You've already scanned it." "We just need to double-check the manifest," she replied mechanically. Wordlessly, Malcolm handed it over. She glanced at it, frowned, then handed it back without a word of apology or explanation. "That's the third time," the man beside him muttered. "They haven't asked anyone else." Malcolm didn't respond. His silence was deliberate, calculated. But inside, something churned, something familiar. That deep, hollow ache of being questioned, disregarded, minimized, all wrapped in the polite, poisonous packaging of so-called protocol. He leaned back in his seat, eyes unfocused, mind racing. This was more than neglect. It was a system playing out in real time, right before his eyes. His system, his brand, and it was failing the very values he built it upon. Not for long. As the plane cruised above the clouds, Malcolm let his eyes drift toward the window, though he wasn't looking at the sky. He was somewhere else, somewhen else. Back in Detroit, back in that cramped one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and the smell of old radiator heat clinging to the walls. His mother, Diane Avery, stood in her faded scrubs at the kitchen counter, reheating leftover soup after a 16-hour shift. Her fingers were swollen from constant sanitizing. Her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had spent the day being overlooked and overworked in a hospital that barely tolerated her presence. "They say I'm too loud when I speak up," she once told Malcolm while gently bandaging a scrape on his knee. "But if I stay quiet, they act like I'm not even there. So I speak when it matters, and I stay silent when it's smarter." Malcolm remembered how she always emphasized dignity over retaliation. She had been passed over for promotions, scolded for being too assertive, and mistaken for housekeeping more times than he could count. But she never stopped, never bent, never let the system dull her pride. She was the first fighter he'd ever known. At 16, Malcolm enlisted in a youth military prep program. Discipline came naturally. So did excellence. By 19, he was deployed. By 23, he was back, older, sharper, focused. With help from the GI Bill, he earned a degree in aerospace engineering, then added an MBA. His professors often underestimated him until test scores shattered their assumptions. Every room he entered, someone tried to measure him down, every time he rose above it. But through it all, one lesson stuck deeper than any combat drill or business seminar. "You don't have to yell to make an impact," his mother had told him one night after he came home bloodied from a street fight. "Sometimes silence says everything. Use it wisely." And so he did. Back in seat 2A, Malcolm exhaled slowly, returning to the present. Lauren passed by, laughing with a passenger in row 1, then glanced at him like he was background furniture. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Not yet. He touched the side of his phone, checked the timestamp on the recordings. Everything was logged, documented, the same way his mother had kept detailed notebooks of every unfair shift change, every missed raise, every slight she endured and survived. He had learned from a master. Malcolm Avery was many things: engineer, strategist, leader. But most of all, he was the son of a fighter. And that fight lived in him still. Malcolm shifted slightly in his seat, careful not to draw attention. His phone, set to silent, rested in his hand just beneath the tray table. The camera lens pointed forward at a slight angle, recording the cabin. His posture remained still, composed. But his instincts were fully engaged, like a soldier listening for movement in the dark. From the front galley just feet away, voices floated through the curtain. "I swear," Lauren said with a huff, "he's pressed that damn call button 3 times. Must be trying to get upgraded food or something." A muffled chuckle followed. Brian's voice. "I don't even know how he got a seat up here." Lauren's voice turned low, but sharp, every syllable laced with disdain. "Probably chomped someone's reward points. You know how they do, always acting like they belong." Malcolm's fingers tightened slightly around the phone. The words were casual, too casual, practiced, habitual. The kind of language used when people assumed no one important was listening or watching. He kept his breathing even, camera still rolling. Brian muttered something in response, but Lauren spoke over him again. "It's not about service anymore," she said. "It's about entitlement. He walks in here like he owns the plane." "That's because I do," Malcolm thought grimly. Across the aisle, the young man who'd been recording a birthday video earlier now sat upright, phone in hand. He hadn't meant to capture anything more than a cheerful message for his mom. But somewhere between smiling into the lens and adjusting his angle, the audio from the galley had slipped into his footage. He replayed the last few seconds, frowned, then turned his phone screen off, glancing toward Malcolm with a conflicted expression. He hadn't heard the full conversation, but what he'd caught made his stomach churn. In 2A, Malcolm's camera continued to record. This wasn't just a lapse in etiquette. It was a cancer. A quiet, insidious prejudice that had somehow slipped past every protocol he'd created, every training manual he'd signed, every standard he had built his company around. But inkless words left stains too, and today he was going to make them visible. As Lauren walked past him once more, fake smile, sharp eyes, Malcolm looked up just long enough to meet her gaze. She looked away first. Malcolm sat back, steady as ever, while the rest of the cabin buzzed in shallow conversations and muted clinks of glasses. Outwardly, he was the picture of composure, a man staring out the window, lost in thought. Inwardly, his mind moved with precision, like a combat strategist flipping switches in sequence. He unlocked his phone with one finger. No anger, no theatrics, just purpose. He tapped the contact labeled simply VB. Veronica Blake answered on the first ring. "Sir?" "Protocol Delta 5, he said, voice low, calm. A beat. "Understood," she replied immediately. No questions asked. He ended the call. In the corporate structure of Orion Air, Delta 5 wasn't public knowledge. It was an internal emergency protocol reserved for service-level violations of the highest magnitude. Most employees didn't even know it existed. It triggered a multi-department cascade: public relations, legal, human resources, and security, all mobilized instantly. Within moments, Veronica would notify the airport's ground supervisor at the Atlanta hub. A private room would be secured near the jet bridge. Uniformed security would be stationed discreetly nearby. HR staff would receive temporary override authority on employee access. Every member of Flight 719's crew would be locked out of Orion Air's internal systems the moment the plane touched down. Malcolm didn't smile. There was no satisfaction yet. Only the deep hum of responsibility echoing inside him. He scrolled briefly through his encrypted app. Footage saved, audio tagged, time-coded, evidence clean and irrefutable. But this wasn't reactionary. This wasn't improvised vengeance in the sky. This had been in motion for a month. Ever since a confidential report surfaced about uneven service patterns on certain high-value routes, Malcolm had been watching. Not just with metrics or customer surveys, but in person. He had flown incognito 4 times in the past 8 weeks. This flight, however, had been deliberate. The final test. If they passed, the program would quietly expand. If they failed, well, they had. Spectacularly. Twist. What the crew didn't know was that Malcolm had handpicked this team for today's flight based on internal flags. Minor complaints, borderline reviews, tone shift patterns from passenger feedback. Nothing overt enough to act on, but enough to warrant one last, fair observation. And they had failed. Openly. Brazenly. Publicly. Now, Malcolm put his phone back in his jacket pocket. His face remained unreadable, his body language unbothered. He looked like any tired businessman headed home. But storm clouds were already forming on the ground. Delta 5 had been deployed, and justice was on final approach. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." The cabin fell silent. We'll be beginning our descent into Atlanta shortly. Please fasten your seatbelts and ensure all electronic devices are in airplane mode. Also, would all cabin crew report to the jet bridge immediately upon landing? I repeat, all flight attendants to the jet bridge upon arrival. Thank you. The announcement ended, but the air didn't settle. It crackled. Malcolm didn't move, but he watched. Lauren froze mid-stride in the aisle. Brian glanced toward the galley. Chelsea looked at Lauren, silently mouthing something. The elderly Asian woman in 3B glanced up from her book, brows pinching with concern. Across the cabin, murmurs spread like spilled coffee. "Is that normal?" a passenger whispered. "Never heard them call out a crew like that," someone replied. Malcolm's seatmate shifted, clearly picking up on the tension. "Something's happening," he muttered, eyes darting toward the crew. It was. Malcolm reached up, calmly opened the overhead bin, and pulled down his carry-on. No one stopped him. No one paid attention, yet. He entered the forward lavatory, locking the door behind him. The small space was cramped, but he moved with efficiency. Jacket off, shirt changed, tie fastened, shoes switched. In 4 minutes, the unassuming man in casual business attire transformed into a presence no one could ignore. He adjusted the lapels of his tailored navy suit, pulled his Orion Air CEO badge from a hidden interior pocket, and clipped it to his breast pocket. In the mirror, he saw what the crew hadn't. Not just a passenger, but power, purpose, and precision wrapped in silence. He opened the lavatory door and stepped into the aisle. The shift was immediate. A few passengers did double takes. One flight attendant, Chelsea, saw him and instinctively straightened, eyes narrowing with confusion. Malcolm said nothing. He returned to his seat for the final minutes of descent. As wheels touched down and the aircraft taxied, Malcolm's eyes moved toward the window. Beyond the jet bridge, he saw them. 2 camera crews, a woman in a sleek blazer with a press badge, and Veronica Blake, standing with arms crossed beside 2 Orion Air security officers in plain black suits. Twist. The press wasn't notified after landing. They'd been called before takeoff. Protocol Delta 5 had contingencies. Malcolm didn't want a confrontation. He wanted transformation, and sometimes transformation required transparency. The aircraft came to a full stop. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed off, and Malcolm Avery stood, the Orion badge gleaming like a silent declaration. Checkmate. The cabin door hissed open. Malcolm stepped into the jet bridge, his stride measured, every inch the executive whose presence no one could ignore. Veronica Blake was already there, flanked by 2 security personnel and a senior HR manager holding a folder thick with documents. The air was tense. Reporters lingered behind a cordon at the far end of the hallway, cameras quietly rolling, microphones ready. The crew emerged one by one. Lauren first, face tight with confusion. Brian and Chelsea followed close behind, whispering to each other. Then came David Norris, the flight supervisor, adjusting his tie, visibly annoyed. "Where's the passenger?" Lauren asked, voice low. Malcolm took one deliberate step forward. "You've been serving him for the last 3 hours." Lauren's eyes widened. "I'm Malcolm Avery," he said calmly, his voice slicing through the silence. "Founder and CEO of Orion Air. The man you refused to greet, ignored for hours, and questioned repeatedly." No one moved. "I wrote the service standards you've been trained to follow," he continued. "I personally designed the equity protocols you've chosen to ignore." He turned to Chelsea. "Miss Adams, you offered orange juice and water to every first-class passenger except me and the elderly woman in 3B. When I pressed the call button 3 times, you never came." Her lips parted to speak, but nothing came out. "To you, Mr. Scott," Malcolm turned. "You told Lauren I must have used someone else's miles. You chuckled. You assumed. You recorded nothing." Brian's face flushed deep red. "And Lauren James," he said, turning fully toward her. You told your colleague that people like me always act like we belong. You muttered under your breath that seat 2A wasn't meant for my type. Lauren shook her head slightly. Sir, No, Malcolm cut in. Don't explain. You had 3 hours to adjust. You didn't. David Norris stepped forward. Mr. Avery, I think this conversation should happen with the union representation present. Malcolm held up one hand. Mr. Norris, you've been flight supervisor for 12 years. In the last 18 months, 17 complaints of racial service disparity crossed your desk. All dismissed, every one of them closed without escalation. David stiffened. Those were misunderstandings, passenger perceptions, not facts. Veronica spoke for the first time, holding up a printed spreadsheet. We found your internal emails, David, telling junior staff to keep it quiet, to not feed the drama. We also recovered redacted notes on at least 5 of those reports, deliberately obscured. A sharp inhale rippled down the crew line. Malcolm's voice dropped. You weren't just negligent. You were complicit. The silence that followed was crushing. You thought you were above the system, he said, eyes scanning them all. But I am the system. You are all officially relieved of duty, Malcolm said, voice clear and final. Effective immediately. The words hit like a bomb. Lauren staggered back a step. You can't do this, she hissed, her mask of professionalism cracking. This is entrapment. You baited us. Brian looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Chelsea's eyes darted from Malcolm to Veronica, searching for an escape. David Norris's jaw clenched. There's due process, protocol. You're right, Malcolm interrupted. And you'll receive every dollar of what you're legally owed. Final pay, benefits, nothing more, nothing less. Then came the outburst. This was a setup, Lauren screamed, eyes wide. You planned this. You flew with us just to make us fail. You baited us, and now you're trying to ruin our lives. Malcolm's expression didn't change. I didn't bait anyone. I gave you an opportunity to uphold the standards you signed on to, and you failed. He nodded to Veronica, who handed him a thin folder. I wasn't going to bring this out, Malcolm continued, unfolding a set of printed screenshots. But since we're questioning fairness, let's talk about what you really think of our passengers. Lauren's eyes narrowed. What is that? Your words, he said simply. From your group chat. He turned the pages around one by one. A message from Lauren. Another one in first class today. Dressed nice, but definitely didn't pay for it. A laughing emoji from Brian. Bet he used a cousin's miles. Again. A meme posted by Chelsea. A photo of a black man in a suit with the caption, "Fake it till you upgrade it." The air froze. Several gasps rose from the hallway. The journalist caught it on camera. HR's face turned stone. That private chat, Malcolm said, holding up the pages, was discovered during an unrelated internal audit 2 weeks ago. I hadn't acted on it yet. I wanted to believe context might save you. His gaze swept over them. It didn't. Lauren's mouth opened, then closed. Brian's face was drained of color. Chelsea looked physically ill. This isn't about one bad flight, Malcolm said. This is about a pattern, a culture, one that you created and nurtured in the shadows. He stepped forward, just enough to make sure they saw the weight of his disappointment. There won't be a second flight. Not under this uniform. Not on this airline. Not ever. A silence fell, deeper than any turbulence. Then Veronica stepped up and addressed the security detail. Escort them off the premises. HR will follow up. The jet bridge, once a quiet corridor of transitions, had become a courtroom, and the verdict was in. As Lauren, Chelsea, and Brian were escorted away, a low buzz rose from the far end of the jet bridge. Reporters pressed forward, lenses aimed, fingers tapping phones. Behind them, a large monitor was being wheeled in by Orion Air's internal communications team, part of the contingency plan under Protocol Delta 5. Veronica gave Malcolm a slight nod. He returned it. Then the screen lit up. The video began shaky, clearly filmed on a phone from seat 4D. The angle caught part of the first-class cabin, the galley, and the tense moment when Malcolm, still dressed in his civilian clothes, had spoken to David Norris. David's voice was unmistakable. "Look, making accusations won't get you special treatment. Maybe in the future, you should know your place and be grateful for what you're given." The audio was sharp, crisp. The silence that followed in the video was deafening. In real time, the jet bridge crowd reacted exactly the same way. Gasps, disbelief, a sharp inhale from one of the HR managers. David turned pale. That was taken out of context," he said, sweat breaking along his brow. Malcolm said nothing. The video continued, showing Malcolm's calm reply. "I know exactly what my place is, and very soon you will too." The footage ended. The room erupted. On social media, the video went live within minutes, pushed out by reporters who had received the clip from Orion's PR team. Within the hour, #Know Your Place trended across the US, then globally. The phrase, once used to diminish, had been reclaimed with fury and purpose. Thousands began sharing their own stories under the hashtag. Airline employees, passengers of color, veterans, executives. The stories poured in like a rising tide. But the real twist was still to come. That evening, as Malcolm sat in a quiet conference room at HQ reviewing reports, Veronica entered with her tablet. "We just received a message," she said, eyes serious, "from a former Orion employee, a flight attendant named Marissa Lynn. She left the company last year." "What did she send?" Malcolm asked. Veronica handed over the tablet. It was a forwarded email thread, dated, archived, complete. The subject line, "Formal complaint, Supervisor David Norris." It detailed an incident involving David dismissing a passenger's sexual harassment complaint and threatening to cut the complainant's hours if she made waves. There were 5 more threads like it, all ignored, all traced back to David. Malcolm's face hardened. "Get legal, get HR. We're reopening every closed file under his name." He looked out the window of the conference room, where the city's skyline shimmered against the night. Some systems rot from the inside out, but this one would not. Not anymore. The recital hall was dimly lit, the hush of anticipation blanketing the audience as the next performer stepped onto the stage. Malcolm sat in the second row, straight-backed, hands clasped, his Orion badge long tucked away, replaced by a father's quiet pride. Lena Avery, 15 and composed beyond her years, adjusted the shoulder rest of her violin with practiced calm. Her black dress shimmered subtly under the lights, but it was her eyes that held the room, focused, sure, determined. The first notes of her piece, Saint-Saëns' introduction and Rondo Capriccioso, soared across the room with grace and fire. Each movement of her bow told a story, and Malcolm, watching her with a heart both full and aching, felt something unshakable settle inside him. He had almost missed this. Almost. If he'd let the anger win. If he'd stayed behind to control every headline, manage every backlash. But Veronica had understood. "Go," she'd said. "We'll hold the line. You have a daughter to witness." And now here she was. His daughter, owning the stage the same way he'd taken back the jet bridge. After the final note, a moment of stillness gripped the audience. Then the applause erupted. Standing ovation. Lena bowed, her cheeks pink, but her spine straight. She left the stage and moments later slipped into Malcolm's waiting arms backstage. "You made it," she whispered, breathless. "I promised I would," Malcolm replied, hugging her tight. They sat together on a backstage bench, away from the buzz, the noise, the world. "You sounded powerful," he said. Lena smiled faintly. "You looked powerful." He raised an eyebrow. "I saw the video," she admitted. "Everyone's seen it. Some of the girls at school were talking about it in orchestra. One of them said it was just a publicity thing." "And what did you say?" Malcolm asked, curious but calm. I said, Lena began, eyes steady, that you didn't raise your voice because you didn't need to. You didn't flip tables or make threats. You just stood there and made people face what they'd done. And that takes more strength than shouting ever will. Malcolm felt a tightness in his throat. Remember when I told you silence can be powerful? He said. She nodded. I didn't understand it then. I think you do now. Lena hesitated, then added, last year, a girl in my class told me I must have gotten into advanced music because of diversity points. I didn't say anything. I just kept playing better than her every week. That's the first time I realized you were right. Twist of the heart. Quiet, sharp, beautiful. You've always been strong, Lena, Malcolm said softly. Now the world's starting to see it. And for the first time in days, Malcolm Avery stopped thinking about policies, headlines, or corporate fallout. For these few quiet moments, he was just a proud father, and that was more than enough. The headquarters auditorium was filled with more employees than Malcolm had ever seen in one place. Pilots in uniform, gate agents in company polos, maintenance crew with oil stains still on their sleeves. Others watched via live stream from regional offices, break rooms, and even parked catering trucks across the country. Malcolm stood alone on stage. Behind him, the new slogan shone brightly on the massive screen. The Dignity Doctrine, accountability with humanity. He didn't use a teleprompter. He didn't need one. 3 weeks ago, Malcolm began, I boarded a flight on my own airline to observe, not to trap, not to punish, but to see with my own eyes if the values we preach are truly lived out where it matters most, face to face with our passengers. He scanned the room, letting the weight of his words settle. What I experienced was not only personal, he continued. It was systemic, not just about me, but about anyone who doesn't look, sound, or move through the world the way some expect. A hush. No coughs. No whispers. Just listening. That's why, starting today, Orion Air is launching the Dignity Doctrine, a comprehensive initiative designed to rebuild our culture from the inside out. It includes mandatory training on unconscious bias, open-door grievance channels, anonymous reporting, and a new system of accountability. Not punishment for punishment's sake, but real, structural change. Applause rippled across the room, but Malcolm raised a hand gently. There's more, he said, because this doctrine is not just about policies, it's about people. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded letter. His voice softened as he opened it. Yesterday, I received this from one of the crew members on Flight 719, Brian Scott. A shift of energy moved through the audience. He wrote, Mr. Avery, I froze when I should have spoken. I stood beside injustice and said nothing. I didn't mock you like the others, but I didn't defend you either. That silence was cowardice. I'm sorry, not because I lost my job, but because I failed to live up to what this company promised it stood for. If you ever allow me the chance, I want to earn back what I threw away. I want to help fix what I helped break. Malcolm paused, then looked directly into the crowd. I've thought a lot about that letter, he said, about what it means to forgive, about whether silence, when born of fear, not hate, deserves a second chance. He folded the letter and tucked it away. And I've decided it does. The room stirred, some in surprise, others in relief. Brian Scott will be reinstated, Malcolm continued, not to his previous role, but into a 6-month pilot program within our new customer experience division. He'll undergo intensive retraining, community service shadowing, and weekly evaluations. If he proves through action what he's written in words, he will earn back not just his job, but the dignity that comes with doing the work. A pause. And that same opportunity will be offered to any former employee who chooses reflection over resentment, growth over grievance. The applause this time was louder, standing, sustained. Malcolm remained still, eyes glistening but steady. This is not about forgetting, he said quietly. It's about remembering so we don't repeat. It's about building something better, together. And with that, Malcolm Avery stepped down from the stage, not just as a CEO, but as a man who understood the cost of dignity and the strength it took to protect it. Flight 2241 to Chicago boarded smoothly, the usual chorus of rolling luggage and muffled announcements humming through the terminal. Malcolm Avery walked alone through the gate, dressed in the same quiet uniform he preferred when flying undercover: dark jeans, collared shirt, and a plain black blazer. No badge, no entourage, just a carry-on and a boarding pass. Seat 2A. The jet bridge was quiet. A young flight attendant greeted him at the door, her posture alert but relaxed, her smile warm without being forced. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome aboard Orion Air," she said. "Seat 2A, right this way. I'll help you get settled." Malcolm blinked once, recognition teasing the edge of his memory. He followed her into the first-class cabin, where she took his coat, offered a beverage menu, and returned moments later with chilled water and a folded blanket. "Let me know if there's anything else I can do for you," she said, then turned to greet the next passenger with equal grace. He watched her for a few moments, efficient, professional, and effortlessly kind to everyone. She assisted an elderly Latino couple with their luggage, knelt to comfort a nervous teenager flying alone, offered genuine compliments to a black woman wearing a stunning Ankara dress. Not a single gesture felt staged. Malcolm settled into his seat and let the hum of the cabin surround him. No side glances, no double takes, no second requests for his boarding pass. Every passenger, regardless of their skin color or accent, was treated with the same quiet dignity. The transformation was subtle, but it was everywhere. In the posture of the crew, the tone of their voices, the ease in the air. This was the airline he had envisioned. This was the standard he had dreamed of. Not one enforced by fear, but upheld by conviction. The flight took off without a hitch. Somewhere over Indiana, Malcolm leaned back, let his shoulders relax, and gazed out the window as sunlight bounced off clouds below. It wasn't until mid-flight that the twist revealed itself. The young attendant returned to offer him another water. Her name tag caught his eye. "J. Rivera, Dignity Cohort 1. He smiled. "That's a special badge," he said quietly. She beamed, slightly surprised. "Yes, sir. I'm part of the first graduating class from the Dignity Doctrine program. We trained for 3 months, intensive work on bias awareness, empathy training, even role-play simulations with actors. I wasn't sure I'd make it through." "You did," Malcolm replied. "Proudly," she said. "It changed the way I think, not just about service, but about people." She paused, then added, "It's strange. They told us the CEO designed the program himself. I hope I get to meet him one day." Malcolm met her gaze for a brief moment. A flicker of knowing passed between them, but he said only, "I think he'd be proud of you." She smiled again, gave a polite nod, and moved to assist another passenger. Malcolm turned back to the window, the clouds soft and golden below. In the reflection, he saw not the man who'd been humiliated in 2A weeks ago, but the man who'd chosen not to retaliate, but to rebuild. Change doesn't begin with power, he thought, but with the courage to stop accepting silence as safety. And for the first time in a long time, Malcolm Avery exhaled, deeply, fully, not because the fight was over, but because it was working.